We're now live with the February 20th, 2019 meeting of the Node.js Technical Steering Committee. I will hand it off to our chair, Michael Dawson.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're following the standard agenda as in the issue that was open for the meeting. The first thing is announcements. I'll start off by mentioning that Jarish Punatel has been nominated as a TSC member. So following our process, he's going to attend a few of the meetings. So welcome, Jarish, to your first meeting.
Thanks, Michael.
Anybody else have any other announcements they'd like to share?
Well, we have booked a venue for the Collaborator Summit, for the Berlin Collaborator Summit. So the dates, this is the issue, and it's issue number 135 on the Node.js Summit repo, and it will be on the 30th and 31st of May. And here is the issue. So please, so book your travel. That's the announcement. Book.
Okay, it's all set. Is it whereabouts is it? Is it close to the JSConf EU venue, or
you are asking a question? I didn't check distance.
Okay.
So we are still in the process of trying to see if there is we can provide some discounts for hotel.
Okay.
But if you need to book long-term travel, long-haul flights, it's, the sooner the better, especially if you need to rely on the Node.js travel fund. So we save everybody some little bit of money overall.
Right.
So the venue has been booked anyway.
Okay,
so
no, that's good. I was just curious. So
the call for session is going to open sooner rather than later. So that will follow. But we have the venue. So as I said, it's a good time as any to start thinking if you want to come.
Sounds great.
So for those asking, I believe that the venue is, it's in the city center. So it is not super duper duper close to the JSConf EU venue, but in general, that area in Berlin doesn't really have a ton of hotels.
Okay.
So you end up, either in Airbnb or in one of the few hotels. But it's about 5 kilometers away. So it's about a 10-minute car ride. It's about 25 minutes on a bus, or about 35 minutes on the U-Bahn, or about an hour walk.
Okay.
Thank you, Miles.
Is it time for another announcement?
I would say yes.
I would like to make an announcement. We recently being yesterday, launched Node.js.dev. That was a 6-week sprint to get it out the door. It was based on the content from the Node.js website redesign group, the content they had been working on for kind of like new getting started and learning content. But that content was unfortunately not really out for the world to enjoy because, there was a lot of other things that the website needs to do. So we made the decision to make a small learning resource site, and you can go to nodejs.dev, and nodejs.dev will take you to that site. And we also have github.com/nodejs/nodejs.dev, and that is the repo. It's a Gatsby application. We're deploying it auto on pushes to master, and there's all sorts of different ways that people can come in and get started and help. I think that there's already 11 or 12 different people who had committed just since we kicked the project off. So, come help, try it out, test it out, let us know what we can improve.
Sounds good. I think also, Miles, you were going to mention the Bootstrap work in the announcements.
Yeah, so we have been working actively since we announced the intent to merge in October on putting together, what the structure and governance of a new foundation could look like. A number of people from the project have been actively involved in this process. I'd like to give specific shout outs to Matteo Collina and Michael Dawson, who have been actively involved in the meetings and have helped with a lot of stuff. as well as Tracy Hines and Jory Burson. There's been a lot of drafting and a lot of back and forth. Where we're at right now, we just did a town hall yesterday that was open to the public, recorded and available on YouTube. We're planning another town hall for about 2 weeks from now. I hope we have a board meeting on Friday, and I'm hoping to get an explicit date when I have everyone in a room where I can get their schedules and we can reach agreement, and we'll let that date out a little bit sooner. A really high-level overview of how this looks is we've got a cross-project council. That cross-project council is chartered by the board to oversee and run, the day-to-day technical and governance of the foundation itself. The CPC, in turn, will then charter the individual projects. Individual projects will have their own governance. That governance will not be overseen, maintained, controlled, or dictated by either the CPC or the board, although there will be some foundation-wide expectations, and depending on the level of the project, as we're going to have a project progression, the level of the project may have certain constraints as well. There is nothing in the constraints that we're looking at that would have the Node.js project not be what we are now calling impact level projects. Every impact level project will be able to vote 2 members as voting members to the cross-project council. And the cross-project council will be the final say on matters such as budget and new projects that will be able to join the foundation. There's a lot more. I think that, just saying words will not really do this justice. There's a slide deck. There's diagrams. I can do a performance dance about it. But, the next town hall in 2 weeks will be a great time to try to find out more about that. And, as always, I'm available. Ping me on Twitter or via email or, IRC or carrier pigeon or whatever works for you.
Yeah, I think it's just good to shout out now that it's getting to the point where, we think we have a good set. So if you look at them and say you have concerns or additional input or whatever else, it's now the time to kind of say, hey, wait a second, or here's some other things to think about or whatever, because other than that, people think it's in a reasonably good shape.
Yeah, bylaws have been drafted based on the current proposals and state of the proposals, and proposals are, for the most part, in a place that are ready to go to the board for board review. There are no outstanding objections on any of them, so if you have them, it's a time to speak up. And we're also moving on a timeline where we're hoping March 11th is the Open Source Leadership Summit, which is the Linux Foundation's annual event where they bring together boards and sponsors from a number of different projects and different foundations. And both the JS Foundation and the Node Foundation will be there physically. So we're going to have a large number of both of the boards there in perfect. So I would really, really love if people could speak up, because we are on a timeline right now of this merger becoming official as soon as March 11th. And so it's really important that people who have objections, have concerns, are involved, because we still have times to change things. And as a caveat, as we've seen with our own projects and our own things, bylaws, charters, all these things can be changed through standard motions. And in fact, one of the things that will be really interesting, Rich, I think you'll like this in particular, I believe, and in practice we'll see how this works. In the new structure, projects are chartered by the CPC, not by the board. So changes to the Node.js charter would no longer require board approval. They would just require CPC approval, which should make it way easier for us to manage things, because the CPC will be chartered by the board to manage charters.
Okay, so do people have any comments, questions, concerns they want to raise or discuss now? If not, I'd say let's move on to our agenda items. Okay, so the first one on the list is events. Add once method to use promises with event emitter. So this is 26078.
Yeah, I've added this.
Okay, why don't you take it away?
Isn't this the one that was resolved last week?
No, I've added it. It's not really resolved in the sense that it was not an open discussion. It was I put it on the agenda mainly for a couple of notes. One is for visibility, and the other one to gather feedback from you folks. Mainly, I've been reasoning with James and a lot of other people on how to put to make our event emitter more promise friendly, especially when working with testing async await code. If you need to interact with some events, it's really complicated to get to write things up in a way that looks coherent with the async await pattern. It feels natural, okay? And I put together that PR based on some code that we got lingering for a year and something on several open source projects, so open source and private projects. So I just wanted to check what you think, folks, and please review. And if you have concern, I'm planning to get that landed as soon as possible. But I just wanted to reiterate, have your feedback and ask your opinion, because this is a new API and there has been some little, not strong objection, not enough to block it, but to that this does not belong in core, while I think it fits in our promise-based improve support for promises strategic initiative. So that's it.
My only concern is that it's just so different to the other.
Sorry, Rod, can you speak up? I don't think I can't hear. I don't know if it's just me.
Rod's muted now, but he was very quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, Rod, can you say that again? Because I don't think we could hear you.
I'm sure he's working on it. He's muted right now.
Sure. Okay.
How about this? Can you hear me?
Still fairly quiet.
Okay, forget it.
Let's all be quiet and let Rod speak, and then we'll.
Okay.
You sure?
Rod, you're muted. He wrote, "Never mind." Maybe
Okay.
You can type into the chat and we can read it if you want.
Yeah. Okay, and Matteo said added to the issue, which probably makes sense as well. So okay. So Matteo, it's just if you'd like people to chime in on the issue effectively.
Yeah, more or less, yes. It's more to gain visibility. If you think this is a good pattern or not, if you want to reiterate before adding it to the runtime, it has a necessary approval to land. I am more concerned of is this the right call, and it's more about API design really rather than other things. So I think it could be useful for simplifying some tasks that are dealing with async await and stuff like that. So
if the main concern is API design, and this may already be in the issue, so I should probably look, but perhaps the thing to do is land it as experimental so the API can be changed.
Possibly, yeah. That's also a good possibility. So I just
yeah, because I think our other promises support is experimental, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That could be a good. If you type it in the issue, so at least we document that. Yeah, that's good.
And Rod's comment is, my concern is that it doesn't match our other promises API. Is there a path to required promises? And Matteo says, no, there isn't.
And the problem is that there never will, because we are actually inheriting from event emitter in streams and HTTP request and everything else. So we can't follow that pattern. That's the problem. So I would love to have required events dot promises, but it's then we got required HTTP dot promises because everything is, I don't know, gets a little bit. So I don't know.
Okay, well, I'd put that comment in the issue and maybe continue the discussion there with that answer in terms of, why not or why. So
yeah, please, because I just wanted to make sure that it has enough visibility with everybody. So.
And I'm going to go ahead and remove the TSC agenda label at this point, unless you want to talk about it as well.
No, it's fine. Exactly, it's fine. I just wanted visibility. So that's.
Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which is 25461, improve next tick performance.
So that was the one I had added the TSC agenda label like 2.5 weeks ago, I think, and it just never got removed. It seems like where that's at right now is Anatoly had an objection. Matteo, I believe, proposed a solution. Anatoly agrees that that solution is adopted. Then it's probably fine, and it's just at that point right now. Is that about it as far as everybody knows, particularly Anatoly and Matteo?
Yeah, I'm happy with it to go through once the changes are made.
I confirm that those changes are giving those numbers.
Okay, cool. So I removed the TSC agenda label, but it's basically blocked until Brian, MSC DEX, either makes those changes or comments that he doesn't, why he might not want to make those changes. I suppose if it really gets stalled and if it's something we really want, someone can just go ahead and add the changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
For whatever it's worth, somebody also needs to approve it. It doesn't have enough approvals right now to land.
Well, it doesn't have because there's not those fixes in.
Yeah, I just mean like people need to look at it. We can't just say it's okay and move on. Somebody will need to review it.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so I don't think we need to discuss in this meeting beyond that. So I think we can move on unless somebody has something to say about it. And I removed the label so it won't show up next week.
Sounds good. Okay, so moving on to the next issue, we have a tracking issue for updating TSC on board meetings. So Miles, anything on that front?
We have a board meeting on Friday. Let me just quickly pop something up here and take a peek. So we have, as you know, the project board that I use to keep track of all the things that are important. Boom. Oh, I just sent that to someone privately. I didn't mean to. Boom. There's the link. You can see the link in there. You can see that we're working with the legal subcommittee on how we should address licenses for non-code initiatives. I believe that we're going to have an answer for you very soon, in the order of like 1 to 2 weeks. We also have something on here about the travel fund for the Collaborator Summit. I believe that I've had confirmation that the travel fund was matched to the travel fund as last year, but because we now have a broader scope and potentially more people looking for funds, I'm going to bring that up to the board on Friday and get a recommendation as to how we handle travel funds and just kind of like how we should approach May and what our best practices and advice from the board from a budget perspective is. Does anyone have anything else that they would like brought to the board?
One quick question. In the one that's related to the non-code, is it going to, maybe you can't answer, but I'm wondering if it's going to cover data as well as, like, there's kind of different flavors, right?
I don't know.
Okay.
And I'm absolutely not a lawyer. So I'm going to say let's wait for the recommendation that we get. And then if that recommendation is unclear, I will follow up and get clarity.
Sounds good.
I think that is it for now.
Okay, so our next item then is an update on the strategic initiative. So I'm just going to flip over to that. So let's start with modules. Miles.
So modules. We had a meeting just before this one. We were kind of hoping to reach consensus on a few things, but it turns out it's contentious and hard. So we are right now trying to meet a deadline of getting our new implementation upstreamed before Node.js 12. There are two major points of contention that we need to determine before we can, actually have something that we could present to the project. Because, first off, we have a group of people. If we can't reach consensus within that group and we end up having to vote on something, it is possible that we bring it back to the Node project and then the exact same people who objected to it in the modules group come and inject to it back in core, which is not, that's not a good look. And it's also not a great way to start things if this is a group that's looking to be chartered. But so we're trying to, the two big contentious bits are still transparent interop and file extension resolution. I think there's a bit of a debate between what we should be doing by default and, how permissive to be with behavior, as well as how we're able to handle God, my brain's done from all the meetings today. Sorry. It's hard. So we're trying to get consensus on these 2 bits, and the hope will be that we'll have something that we can upstream before April.
Okay. Next one is NAPI. So I think, there's continued work to help on the adoption front. There has been some good progress on the modules that were called out in one of the Node core issues as being problems for 12 before. Some of the authors have made NAPI versions. We've helped contribute some NAPI versions of those. Otherwise, there's a continued focus on, handling the issues that are opened and dealing with the PRs that are landing. I don't think, Gabriel, do you have anything else to call out on that front? Maybe we lost Gabriel. I thought he was here. Anyway, next one is OpenSSL evolution.
Yeah, Gabriel dropped off before we started streaming. I don't know why.
Okay. So Rod, on OpenSSL then?
How's this mic?
That's pretty good.
This is not directly on the topic, but it's related. There's a security release coming out next week for OpenSSL. It's not for 110, but it's for 102 and 111. So it's only going to impact nodes 6 and 8. The security fixes included marked moderate, and which is higher than some we've done in the past for releases. So I would say we need to prep for security releases next week. I haven't put an issue up yet on GitHub, but I'll do that today. So okay. Releases for 6 and 8.
Any update on the evolution itself?
No, not from me. Sam, I assume, has been working on that. I tuned out on that. Just
okay.
Recently.
I think, as far as I know, he's making good progress on getting TLS 1.3 working, and I think he's fairly optimistic that we can get like TLS 1.3 on by default for 12, and backported to 10, but not necessarily enabled under a flag, because there are some things that change when you turn that on. Okay, workers. I don't think we have Anna this week, but I think that's going well, and I saw a comment that the goal is still to potentially get that as non-experimental for 12.
Yeah, that was something Anna commented.
Yep.
Hasn't the flag in the experimental bit been removed?
The flag is removed, but it's still experimental, which I know is a thing, but it's a thing.
Yep.
We do a lot. So.
I'm just going to say, hoping to get out of experimental for 12.x. I don't know, error messages. I don't have Joey, I don't think. Do we have James? No.
James is out of them.
That's right. So core promise APIs, I guess we'll have to decide what we do in terms of updates from that front. Governance, I guess, effectively, Miles, you've already given an update.
Yep.
Let's see, announcement on Bootstrap. I almost wonder if we should drop the governance one from the strategic initiatives list.
I'd be okay with that at this point. Seems like something that we've moved past, unless I guess like the only thing that I think is going to be worth leaving that there for is that once the merge officially happens, there's likely changes we'll have to make. There are definitely changes that we need to make to our charter and possibly to like some of the internal things in the way that we work with stuff. So
add it back if it needs to be added back.
Yeah, I just mean like that's happening in like N weeks, not in N months. So it's like
Miles, it will be good to know exactly what is going to change.
Yeah, we need to get sign off on the upstream bylaws. And once those bylaws are changed, I'm happy to draft and make an update to our charter to reflect that. I think the biggest change, and this is, something to be, to consider in all of this is, like, as it is right now, Node.js has that board seat. In the new structure, the CPC has a board seat, and then there's a floating board seat that can be assigned on an annual basis by the CPC as it sees fit, which the intention right now is that would go to the Node.js project in the first year. A couple things to consider there would be the changes we need to make to our charter to reflect that, the process that we want to have in place for it. And then thirdly, and this is something I've sent an email before and, is not clear to me at the moment is, I will likely not be continuing in this director role that I'm doing at the moment once this restructure happens. So if the Node.js project is going to be requesting to take that additional board seat, who do we have in mind to be doing that role?
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add into that is I don't know if we need charter changes or whatever, but also we need to reflect the escalation on the code of conduct side of things.
Be careful about getting too much into discussion during the
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So anyway, I think those are two of the major things, but new stream APIs, Jeremiah. So we have Jeremiah. Yep.
Yeah. So this is still kind of like parts of it are stalled on me and parts of it are stalled on others. So it's kind of just in limbo right now.
Okay. Stalled. Okay. V8 currency. I don't think we have Michael today, do we?
No.
Okay. Async hooks. Do we have Ali? Yeah, we have Ali. Anything on that?
There's nothing new on async hooks this time around.
Open web standards. Do we have Joy? Sorry. Don't think so, but Miles, do you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, I guess some things to keep an eye on. The WICG has a proposal called import maps, which will bring bare imports to the browser. A demo of that has now gone live, showing that it's able to work in a polyfillable way inside of browsers, and there's an intent to ship it. So this is, a major change to our ecosystem where it will be possible, in theory, to npm install modules and then import them in the browser without requiring a build step. It will just require metadata that can be generated by the package manager. Some other open standard stuff that's worth taking a look at. The WICG also, that's a W3C working group, also has some work going on around a new file system API. It's capabilities based. It might be something that's worth us taking a look at and potentially participating in. They're looking at spinning up a group around Quick as well. I know that we have some people beginning to implement Quick, so that would be probably a good idea to get involved in that process early on. TC39 happened, about, like 25 days ago. I was there, as was a couple other people from the foundation. What we tried to bring dynamic modules change for the module group. That was not successful. A bunch of us are still doing work on the top level await proposal, which is actually getting some traction right now and is looking like it might be in the timeline of something that could happen this year. Other than that, there aren't major proposals that would affect us too much, aside from perhaps decorators, which is fairly contentious. So that's something that people may want to look into. Outside of that, there's also some work being done with the IETF right now on standardizing the MJS extension, and that's something that I'm working on with Matthias. If anyone has any questions about any of the standard stuff, I'm getting more and more involved in it and have, I think, like a pretty decent grasp of the things that are interconnecting between our communities, so feel free to reach out and ask me questions.
Okay. Python 3 and JIP. Do we have?
No.
3 Python? No. Okay. I know there's lots of activity on that front, though, so that's good. Okay, so that's the our updates on the strategic initiatives. At this point, unless there's any other issues that people want to raise or discuss, we should move on to the Q&A from YouTube, and if there are any questions. Let's just take a look if there are any comments there. I don't see any comments. I assume that there would still be there if there. Oh no, sorry, that's the previous one. My bad. Let me look again. Okay, I don't see any comments there either. Oh, wait a sec. There we are. Okay, there's just a comment asking about whether they should learn React or Vue.js for freelance market.
Outside of our scope.
Yeah, I don't think that's within our scope. And other than that, those are the only questions. So I think no questions this week. So I think we'll call the meeting for today. Talk to everybody later. Let me just, I guess, Miles, you can stop the stream.